What's going on, everybody? We're fixing to do a John boat wiring episode, just a simple John boat wiring guide, just to get some lights, depth finder, some switches. And I tell you what, it is peaceful this morning. You can hear my old rabbit dogs barking, but man, that water is smooth as glass. And it's been like that all morning. I've been out here getting ready to make this video, and man, it's just been peaceful out here, other than my rabbit dogs right there barking a little bit. But here we go, right here. We've got it 99% finished up, and that's it. So we've got to find a step drill bit. I thought it was in my truck, because I had been doing running some wire to my pier, and I can't find my step. There it is, right there. Little step drill bit, little Milwaukee step drill bit. Been running some power to my pier, put in a LED street light on a pole, put some switches and some plugs out there where I can have power and light while I'm working on boats down there. If I'm working on one in the water at the ramp or something. But anyways, all right guys, so this is what we got right here. My dad picked this boat up, picked it up for 1,200 bucks, and I've been kind of cleaning it up, doing some welding on it. I had to fix this piece here. It was broke on all three sides. It was just about to come off of there. Got that fixed, got the trailer lights fixed. This is a pretty wide John boat. I'm gonna guess it's a little bit over 48 inches wide, because a sheet of plywood don't go all the way across. There's a gap on each side, so a little bit wider than a 48 inch. It's got a live well with a drain. We've got to replace these rivets here. Got a little 25 horse Johnson that I went through. It'd been sitting a while, had a few problems, got it cleaned up. Had a crack in the transom right here I had to weld up, and welded up a bunch of holes here. We've got to find some touch-up paint for that, but let's get started on this wiring. So let me explain to you what I want. I ordered these lights. This is just a navigation light, white navigation light, off of Amazon. Doesn't have, this is the base that I chose to order because I didn't want to drill such a big hole in the boat like you would on a regular bass boat, and put the plug where you can remove the light. I ordered this set of switches. It's got a voltage gauge, USB phone charger, and 3 switches. So you'll have switch for the lights, switch for a depth finder, and if we want to put a pump or something else in, we'll have a switch for that. Ordered this little front LED navigation light. We'll put that on the front. It's just a stationary light. And this box here is what I'm excited about. So this box, they call this thing a hobby box, and or a little project box. You can get them off of Amazon, but to keep from having to, you know, mount your switches somewhere in the boat, or having something kind of ugly, you can take this box here, mount it on the side of the boat wherever you want it. You could even mount it here if you wanted to. We may do that, I don't know. But basically, this is just a little project box. Comes with some screws, and you can take it apart. A lot of people use it to mount relays or whatever. And one time I built I'm trying to think of what I would call that. But anyway, I put a set of relays in it. Put a little, it's like a temperature relay. And then I had a probe that would go into a lead melting pot, and it would keep me from getting my lead too hot. For whenever I poured my jigs and stuff. But so I've used these before. Let's talk about a little bit about the wiring. So I've got some marine wire. This is a 14 gauge, 14.2. and it is double insulated, and just a red and black wire. One thing I'd like to talk about the wiring that you use. This wiring is cheap on Amazon. Okay, this is that's probably a 14, no, it's 16 gauge. We'll use this for the lights, because the lights, LED lights, is going to pull hardly any voltage. I've done this so many times, I know about what size wire to use. If you're trying to figure something for, so if you're trying to put a trolling motor, what I'm trying to explain is, you know, figure out what you're running, figure out how many amperage it's pulling, the voltage, amperage, and then you figure the length. So if you're running a wire from the front to the back of the boat and it's your trolling motor, and you've got a 12 volt trolling motor, like a 55 pound 12 volt trolling motor, okay, you may have to run like a number 8 wire for it not to have a voltage drop, not to get too hot. So you have to figure your wire size. I'm not going to go into that. What you need to do if you don't know how to figure wire size is go to Google, type in wire size calculator, you put in your voltage, whether it's 12 volts, if it's a trolling motor you could have 24 or 36 volt. It'll be DC, direct current. It won't be alternating current. Everything that you'll deal with in a boat will be DC, but you need to properly figure your wire size. Another thing, guys, don't skimp on your wire. Don't buy cheap wire. Buy a good stranded marine grade wire. This wire right here has got like a tin coating on it, and it keeps it from corroding. I've run copper wire years ago in boats, and as soon as it gets a little moisture on it, it corrodes, and within 3 or 4 months the wire was completely corroded, no good. I had to rerun the wire. So you want to buy a good wire. If you want to skimp on things to save money, there's plenty of other things to skimp on and to save money on besides your wiring. You're in a metal boat. You don't want any trouble. You don't want any arcing. You don't want any kind of fire. You don't want to see any kind of smoke. So you want to properly get your wire size, your fuses, your relays, whatever that you use. But what I want to do is I want to kind of dumb down wiring in this video, to where, you know, there's plenty of videos online about how John boat wiring, they do crazy lights, they've got crazy electronics. The Tiny Boat Nation guys, they put lights in every compartment, cut on and off switches, and you know, basically all I'm wanting to do is just show you guys a simple wiring to where you can fish at night, add you some running lights, or docking lights, as I should call them, or you know, your navigation lights, and you know, switch for a depth finder, or a small pump for a live well, or a bait tank, or whatever, charge your cell phone while you're fishing, that kind of thing. Nothing extravagant here. If you want to see that kind of job, this isn't the video for you. This is just a basic wiring guide, and that's all we want to do here. So, all right, enough talk about that. Let's talk about what you're going to need as far as tools. I have some electrical tape. I've got some solder. I've got my electrical connectors, and I've got my self-tapping screws if I need any. And then rivets, rivet gun. You can pick these up from Harbor Freight just about anywhere. You'll need a pair of butt splicing pliers, wire strippers. You don't want to do it with a knife. I'll explain that here in a little while, and why you don't want to use a knife to skin your wire. Use a good pair of strippers. This pair is a set of snap-on. Not expecting everybody to be able to have these, but get you a good pair of wire strippers, you know, butt splicing pliers, cutters. I've got some layout tools. You don't necessarily have to have what I have. I'm a machinist, so I've got some good layout tools. Probably a step drill bit, pliers, file, set of bits for either drilling holes, or if you need a Phillips or whatever. So this back light will mount with these Phillips screws, stainless steel Phillips screws. Got a tape measure, and I've got some wire loom here if I decide to use that, and I've got a torch. So I've also got this set of nibblers. You don't have to have these. I use that to square up the hole on that project box. So, and I'll get to that here in a minute. You don't have to have these, but you can get these off of Amazon. And what else do I need? I've got zip ties in case I need them. You're gonna need a snake, something, you know, if you don't have a snake, you don't have to go buy one. Just use like a metal clothes hanger or something. Okay, so I might mention that there may be some expert in the comments that says this, you don't have to have a 16 gauge wire for your front lights. It's a little bit too big of a wire. The reason why I do that is if I ever decide to put anything else up here like a depth finder, you could piggyback off of that wire. You'd have to run your lights the same time you run the depth finder, but you know, it's not against the law to do that. So go ahead and get started on running this wire. First, what I'll do is I'll measure off about how much wire I need to get to where I'm going. So I'm wanting to mount this switch box right here behind, well, I guess I could mount it here, but it would hide the wires better if I mounted it here. I need to pull enough wire. I need to go ahead and start pulling this wire through here. And what I'd like to do is I like to run it through this loom. I'm coming from here because I plan to mount the light here, front light here. I'm gonna come down the side, I'm gonna go down here, and I'm gonna run it through this and come out either here or here. So anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and run that real quick. Alright, we got these back two wires run. So this is your wire for your light. Let's see. Alright, so 16 gauge there, so that'll be the wire for the light, and this is the wire that supplies power. We'll come back to that in a minute. This is where that step bit comes in handy. My experience of mounting these lights, the further over, the best. So and of course you want to make sure you access. Alright, we'll put a hole. Alright, and this hole is just strictly to run the wire through. So I'm assuming that the negative and the positive does not matter, being that both wires here are labeled the same. So I'm gonna hook them up and go ahead and get this connection made. These butt splices here are 16 to 22 gauge. They're also heat shrink. The way I done that is I went in between the two wires here. And what I'll do is I'll very carefully cut this off. Okay, I'm fixing to explain something pretty important here in just a second. So I just scar that and then I rip it away. That way I don't risk damaging my insulation on my two wires that I need. So what I'm fixing to show you, if you take your knife and you scar that around there, what you do is you cut those strands of wire in there. A stranded wire always will supply voltage better. Stranded's better than a solid wire. It's also easier to run. So on like a vehicle, I see this a lot asked on these tiny boat groups. Can you ground? And what it is, a lot of guys are used to working on their vehicles, and their vehicles are your chassis is ground, your frame's grounded, and you just run a power wire to everything to save your negative wire, you know, to keep from having to run two wires to everything. You just get a ground from anything metal on the vehicle once it's, you know, grounded to the frame and the body, and then you just run a power wire to everything. Well, everybody says, well, can I ground my boat? Well, not everybody, but a lot of people. I see it asked almost probably once a week. And what a lot of people want to know is, can you ground your metal boat and use to keep from having to run two wires? Well, you can. It would work, but you need to look up, Google electrolysis, YouTube it, whatever, and you'll learn that you can take rust. I used to do it to take rust off of metal, and we would also put pumps in a tank and use the electrolysis to get the calcium and stuff off of those pumps. What we'll do is we'll use these blue terminals, since that is a 14 gauge. What does it say? 14 to 16, 16 to 14. Yep, 16 to 14 gauge. We'll use those. I do not have any fuses. I would recommend running a fuse here at the battery. It needs to be within, I would say, 8 inches of the battery. So what I'll do is, whenever my fuse comes in, is I'll just cut my power wire and fuse in, hook up that fusible link. And you'd also need to size your fuse right. Your fuse, so if your wire is rated for 15 amps, let's say, and you need to have, I don't know, you'd probably need to run a fuse smaller than what your wire would handle. That way you don't burn. Your fuse is only there to protect your electronics or your wire. Or your wire is basically what the fuse is there to protect, because your wire, it just makes a weak link in the chain of wire, so to speak, to burn out if it gets a short or something's pulling too many amps. It's made to burn that fuse. Make sure that you get a good connection, good crimp on that. And if you do that crimp right, you should not be able to pull those apart, you know, just yanking on them by hand. Okay, so this is what the scribe and the square is for. You don't have to have it. You could use a framer square you could use, you know, the other side of this right here to scratch the line. So this is the switch panel that I use. You can buy round switches, just drill holes. But this one looks like it's about 3 7/8 by 4 5/16. So we're not going to cut a hole 3 7/8 by 4 5/16. We'll actually cut that hole 3 1/2 by 3 1/4. So pick out how you want it to lay out in there, and then you'll just scribe your make your lines, and then we'll drill that out, and then we'll use those nippers. This is what these little nippers are for. And what you do, you line that up on the bottom and see how that knocks. It just kind of nibbles that material out of there. So anyway, I'm not going to bore you with this process. You know, if you ever seen this done before, I could go in there on the milling machine and do this, but and then just nibble out the corners. But I don't know, I guess I want to show y'all how you do this if you don't have a machine shop. You just have some basic tools. But I'm gonna get this squared out and fitted, and bring you guys back. Oh. So we've got that mounted right there. Went ahead and put screws in it. Gonna explain this a little bit. See what I was saying about barely getting any material. I wound up having to notch that out. It's a little bit more jagged than what I wanted, but as long as I've got material there to hold the screws, that's really all I cared about. So this is the most important thing, component to this whole boat wiring, and it's this right here. You can pick these up. I imagine you can get them off Amazon or wherever, but I buy them at Home Depot, buy them at Lowe's. And basically what I do is I just take and use my step bit there, drill that hole out, and put this in. Deburr my edge, and then I'll take a pair of pliers and tighten up the screw on the back side of there. And what this does is it allows you to run those wires through here and clamp them. That way, let's say you're fishing or something and you get a hook, you tree up or get snagged up, and you get snagged up on these wires, and it keeps you from pulling and damaging, pulling these wires off of your any of these connectors, pulling anything out of the splice, anything like that, because you know, all this is metal here and it will conduct electricity, and if you have everything fused right, you have nothing to worry about. But it's just for a little bit more peace of mind, secure those wires a little bit better. So I'm going to explain another thing while I'm here. This is your voltage gauge and your USB charger. You'll have your hot and negative for here. Probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this as well. That way it's not running all the time, and that's probably what I'll use one of these switches for. But all of these, you know, this looks complicated, but it's really nothing to it. All of these are daisy chain to this switch. So whenever this has power, it'll light that switch up whenever you flick it on. So you'll have 3 connectors here, and that's where you'll hook your power to either your, you know, whatever that you're running to, whether it be depth finder, whatever, lights, whatever you figure. But basically what you'll do is you'll just hook all your negatives together, and you'll hook this to either power or one of these switches. You'll need to power your red wires, and then you'll hook your lights into these prongs right here. So I'm gonna get these wires hooked up, everything put together, and before I close it up, I'm gonna show you what I've done. So here we go right here. We've got it 99% finished up, and that's it. That's a clean little box there. I love the way that looks, the aluminum boat, having the lighted switches, also having a voltage gauge to see where your battery voltage is. I got a few more projects I'm gonna do to this boat. It's starting to kind of rain, but I've got that wire run all the way, and I put some clips, got that butt splice and heat shrink, in tape, and that is a LED light. Anyway, I tucked it as tight to the corner as I could and put some self-tapping screws. I hate drilling holes in boats, but sometimes you just have to. What I've done, if I drill a hole, how I mounted this box, I mounted it with rivets here, and if I drill a hole, what I try to do is come above the water line. I've got a TIG welder. I can weld these weld holes back up in them, but I hate to put them in there. So let's see, have I got that wired? All right, first switch cuts the voltage gauge on, and also the USB charger. The second one cuts the back light on, and the other one, the very front one, cuts the very front light on, and that's it. The reason why, one thing I'd like to add, I mean, this is just a project boat, something my son's gonna fish out of a little bit, and then we're gonna sell it. But I don't want to put a whole lot of money into it. But I had these lights laying around, I had this stuff laying around for another boat that I was gonna do, but wound up selling it before the rest of the parts come in. Like, it took 2 weeks for this box to come in. Normally, I mean, you get those within just a couple of days. But the only thing that I might add is sometimes you can get a 3-way toggle switch, or 2-way, I guess you should say, to where to run the back and the front, your anchor light and your navigation light, and then you flip it the other way and it just runs your, you know, the middle would be off, and then all the way up top would be just the anchor light. So the only problem with that is those switches are like 40 bucks now for a good switch that's gonna hold up more than just a couple of weeks out in the rain or in the weather, whatever. But I think I paid like 20 or 30 bucks for this whole switch, these 3 switches, the aluminum plate, the voltage gauge, and the USB charger pre-wired. So if you kind of see what I'm saying, the only thing that I'm gonna go back and do, I'm gonna put a few zip ties, but I've got to put a small fuse on here. These LED lights, I mean, both of them together, I put an amp gauge on them before, and I want to say that it was less than 1 amp for LED light for both of them tied in together. So really not pulling any electricity here. So make sure if you do this, I'm just showing you my way of doing this. This is just a simple, budget friendly electrical job, and you know, making it look nice without spending a lot of money, being functional, be able to fish at night without spending a whole lot of money. Because you know, I had screws that I didn't, and these clamps, and I already have wire connectors and already have solder, stuff like that. But just for that box, just for the panel, the lights, connectors, I'm gonna say I've done this for less than 100 bucks, probably more, around like 80. But depending on how much wire, I mean, you could buy 1 roll of you can buy it in 15, 24, you can buy it in different lengths, but I just usually get 75 or 100 foot, whatever the biggest roll is, because you can usually get it cheaper, and I use so much of it. But get you some good wire, take your time, do it right, put it in loom so it looks nice, you know, do a professional job.